3 stories from rural Alabama. Quaint bed and breakfast. In a small town in rural Alabama, there's a quaint bed and breakfast that's been around for generations. The owners, a sweet elderly couple, have been running it for over 40 years. Guests often rave about the charm of the place, but there's one room that's notorious among visitors. Room 303. Several guests have reported strange occurrences in room 303 over the years. One such incident involved a young couple on their honeymoon. They checked into the room and settled in for the night, excited for their romantic getaway. However, as they were drifting off to sleep, they heard footsteps pacing back and forth outside their door. Assuming it was just someone from the staff, they ignored it and tried to fall asleep. But the footsteps continued, growing louder and more erratic as the night went on. Eventually, the couple couldn't take it anymore and decided to investigate. When they opened the door, they were met with an empty hallway. Confused and a little spooked, they returned to their room and tried to forget about it. However, the strange occurrences didn't stop there. Throughout the night, they heard disembodied voices whispering their names and felt cold drafts even though the windows were closed. Needless to say, they didn't get much sleep that night. The next morning, they mentioned their experience to the owners over breakfast. The elderly couple exchanged a knowing glance and calmly explained that room 303 has a reputation for being haunted. They recounted several similar stories from past guests, all describing eerily similar experiences. Despite the unsettling encounter, the young couple laughed it off and decided to enjoy the rest of their honeymoon. But they couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone in room 303 that night. As the young couple checked out of the bed and breakfast, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with trepidation. Even though their stay in room 303 had been unsettling, it had also been undeniably memorable. As they drove away from the quaint little town, they couldn't help but wonder about the mysterious forces that seemed to linger within the walls of the old inn. Perhaps some mysteries are better left unsolved, but for those who dare to venture into room 303, the whispers of the past may never truly fade away. Huntsville, Alabama Farmhouse. In the countryside near Huntsville, Alabama, there's an old farmhouse that's full of stories. People say a ghost lives there, a sad spirit from a long time ago. One summer night, some friends went to stay at the farmhouse. They heard strange noises, like someone crying softly. One friend woke up and followed the sounds. They went up to the attic and saw a faint light. In the corner, they saw the ghost of a young woman. She looked sad and disappeared quickly. But this wasn't the first strange thing that happened in the farmhouse. The family who owned it had their own spooky experiences. One night, the family's grandmother heard footsteps in the hallway when everyone else was asleep. She thought it was her grandchildren playing a prank, but when she looked, no one was there. Another time, the family's youngest daughter woke up to find her toys scattered across the room. She was sure she had put them away before bed, but somehow they were all over the floor. She couldn't explain it. Even the family's dog seemed to sense something strange. He would bark and growl at empty corners of the room, as if he could see something the family couldn't. As the friends listened to the family's stories, they realized they weren't alone in their experience. Other people had felt the presence of the ghostly spirit too. One guest who had stayed at the farmhouse years ago recalled waking up in the middle of the night to see a figure standing at the foot of their bed. They couldn't make out any features, just a dark shape in the darkness. Terrified, they pulled the covers over their head and waited for morning to come. Another guest reported hearing whispers coming from the walls, as if the very house itself was speaking to them. They couldn't make out what the voices were saying, but they knew they weren't alone. And then there was the story of the old mirror that hung in the hallway. Some guests claimed that when they looked into it, they saw a reflection that wasn't their own. Instead, they saw the ghostly figure of a young woman staring back at them, her eyes filled with sadness and longing. As the friends listened to these stories, they couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. the farmhouse seemed to hold more secrets than they had ever imagined. Despite their fear, the friends were determined to uncover the truth behind the ghostly happenings. Armed with flashlights and courage, they ventured into the darkest corners of the farmhouse, determined to confront whatever spirits lurked within. But as the night wore on and the shadows grew deeper, they realized that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved. In the end, they left the farmhouse with more questions than answers, but with a newfound respect for the spirits that called it home. And though they may never fully understand the truth behind the ghostly happenings, they knew one thing for certain: the farmhouse would always hold a special place in their hearts, as a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. The old abandoned house. In the quiet countryside of Alabama, there's an old house that's long been abandoned. Its weathered exterior and boarded-up windows tell a tale of neglect. But the stories whispered among locals paint a much darker picture. They say the house is haunted, and many have experienced strange and eerie phenomena within its crumbling walls. One moonlit night, a group of friends gathered around a campfire, sharing tales of the supernatural. As the flames flickered and the shadows danced, they couldn't resist the allure of the abandoned house that loomed in the distance. With a mixture of curiosity and trepidation, they decided to investigate. Approaching the old house, they felt a chill in the air, despite the warmth of the summer night. The house seemed to creak and groan as if it were alive, its darkened windows staring back at them like empty eyes. As they stepped inside, the air grew heavy with the weight of forgotten memories. They heard strange noises, whispers in the darkness, footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. Each creak of the floorboards sent shivers down their spines, and they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, one of the friends froze in their tracks, their gaze fixed on a figure standing in the hallway. It was faint and translucent, like a ghostly apparition emerging from the shadows. Their heart pounding in their chest, they watched as the figure seemed to drift silently past, disappearing into the darkness. Terrified but intrigued, they ventured further into the house, determined to uncover the truth behind its haunted reputation. But with each step, the atmosphere grew more oppressive, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were intruding on something otherworldly. They weren't the only ones to experience the house's ghostly presence. Over the years, countless others had reported similar encounters, whispers in the night, strange shadows flickering in the corners of their vision, and an overwhelming sense of dread that seemed to linger long after they had left. Some said they heard voices calling their names when no one else was around. Others claimed to have seen figures moving through the darkness, their forms indistinct and ghostly. These stories had been passed down through generations, woven into the fabric of local folklore. The house had become a symbol of fear and fascination, a place where the veil between the living and the dead seemed to blur. Despite the warnings from the locals, who urged them to stay away from the haunted house, the allure of the unknown proved too strong for some. They continued to explore its abandoned halls, drawn by the mystery that seemed to hang thick in the air. But as the years passed and the stories grew, the old house remained a place of darkness and dread, a testament to the enduring power of the supernatural. And though its secrets may never be fully uncovered, the haunted house of rural Alabama would continue to cast its long shadow over the land for generations to come. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Come back often for more ghostly, paranormal tales. Some are based on real sightings and some are just short stories. Either way, I hope you enjoy. Don't have nightmares.